we've got your geek news right here.
That Daft Punk soundtrack couldn't have been more perfect for Tron. I've been listening to it constantly since the movie.
And it's the perfect soundtrack to our review of Tron Legacy, which is a movie that did a lot of things perfectly, like the music.
But whether you're a fan of the original or not, there are a few points that range from slightly sketchy to flat-out errors in filmmaking.
Whew, and before we get into reviewing Legacy as a sequel, first we're going to talk about it spoiler-free as a standalone film.
But once we get into sequel mode, watch out, because we are holding nothing back, including some very heavy spoilers.
Attention program. You will receive an identity disc. Everything you do or learn will be imprinted on this disc. If you lose your disc or fail to follow commands, you will be subject to immediate de-resolution.
Marion complete. Disc activated and synchronized. Proceed to games.
Games?
From the introduction of the grid with Jeff Bridges' voice, things had the right tone, and if we had jumped right into Sam Flynn's annual prank on Encom, it would have been flawless.
But we were instead treated to a digital Jeff Bridges circa 1989 that was nothing short of unacceptable.
Yeah, he just was not photoreal enough to believe. In the grid, it's one thing. The excuse of saying Clue is a digital avatar, it's almost enough to make that technology forgivable.
Exactly, but you know, as Kevin sits on Sam's bed, the contrast between a real child actor and a motion captured visual effect is somewhat jarring, actually.
It's so distracting that you can't actually enjoy the scene for what it is.
But once that scene is over and done with, we get honest to goodness actors for a while.
Oh, and one of which was Cillian Murphy, much to our surprise, playing the son of the evil executive from the first Tron.
Yeah, I had no idea he had a cameo in this. He's completely uncredited.
Which is pretty wild.
Yeah, it's
but
pretty cool.
once Sam is on the grid, the visuals do not disappoint. It's a mix of The Matrix and Sin City that just feels right. It's such a richly textured world, and once we're there, the pacing goes wild.
Absolutely. From disc games to light cycles, the action pieces are epic and just keep coming.
And then we get to Kevin Flynn, the hippie zen Obi-Wan Kenobi meets the dude that makes the movie really start to sing.
Oh yeah, Bridges really rocks out playing both Flynn and Clue, and the parallels in their philosophies make for fascinating character development as we benefit from, more backstory in the flashbacks.
Now the final action scenes and plot line, that kind of leaves a bit to be desired. It gets into spoiler territory, so without further ado, let's talk about Legacy as a sequel and let the spoilers fly.
I was paged last night.
Oh man, still rocking the pager. Good for you.
Yeah, your dad once told me I had to sleep with it. I still do. Page came from your dad's office at the arcade.
Let's start this off with a disclaimer that I officially love the updated redesign of the grid. From the light cycles to the recognizers to the costumes, I think this new look is gorgeous and an appropriate way to show how today's computer world would be faster and slicker than the one in the 80s.
It sounds like there's a but coming up.
But the flashbacks should have been in the classic look of Tron. We should have seen that evolution, not the total denial of the production value of the original. Bomber jackets that light up just don't cut it.
Yeah, I can see how that would be a serious issue for you. I mean, it's either an evolution or it's retcon. You can't have it both ways.
That's what I'm talking about. But I've got to give credit to the fact that the sequel kept the pattern of bookending the grid storyline with real-world story and never intercutting the two. Once the user is in the machine, as a viewer, you're in too.
And the use of 3D really did a great job of driving that home. There was even a disclaimer at the beginning to make sure that we didn't feel like we were wearing our glasses with no payoff, which is pretty cool.
Now, speaking of doing something that leads to no payoff, let's talk about a rather important part of this movie. Just for a second, his name is Tron.
Yeah, you know what? I love getting to see the young and old Bruce Boxleitner in this movie. I actually think he looked more convincing than Robo Bridges did.
I couldn't agree more because I just thought he looked awesome in those flashbacks as Tron. I think Bruce has just aged a little more gracefully maybe because his performance capture registered a lot more true than Jeff's did.
Well, in the real world scenes, his character was such a great idealist. I felt so bad for him being so undervalued by Incom.
And he had great parallels to the Barnard Hughes character in the first Tron, that old idealist being pushed aside by his company's new executives.
But I really felt like Tron himself was underused in the film, considering that's, the name of the movie.
And what's worse than that, something I have to call a straight-up filmmaking storytelling error. And here come the biggest spoilers. When it comes out that Clue's right-hand man, Rinsler, is actually a reprogrammed Tron, and then Tron overrides Clue's commands to fight for the user. Where was the reveal?
Yeah, that was pretty weak. Great, his orange suit went blue, but I wanted to see that mask come off and have Bruce's heroic face there being Tron and being awesome.
And I can't for the life of me figure out why we didn't get exactly that. Are we making a blockbuster here or not? There's a budget. You have Bruce looking perfect. This is nothing short of a mistake, and it kills the payoff.
Oh, and what's an ISO?
Yeah, okay. That made just about no sense. Granted, the video games and graphic novels do dip into that part of the mythos and the difference between basic programs and the isomorphics.
Now, I'm all for extended narratives and other media like that, but that element just really entirely felt glossed over in the film.
Well, by the sounds of it, the way that time passes on the grid, there is 1,000 years of storyline in there between 1989 and 2010.
Well, that's a lot to gloss over.
Absolutely. My final issue with Tron Legacy is the inconsistency of birthing and killing Clue, who's just a basic program. Because in the first one, Clue was written in the real world by Flynn, and then de-res by Master Control pretty effortlessly.
Yeah, so why did Flynn have to dramatically doppelgang himself to build Clue 2? And then why sacrifice himself to de-res it?
Exactly. I'm sure it made for some serious drama, but the cool visuals just weren't worth the unnecessary sacrifice and senseless plot point.
Yeah, Sam could have just hopped out into the real world and deleted Clue in 5 seconds on the keyboard.
That's
right?
what I'm talking about. But
That's a little anticlimactic.
it totally is. But all in all, I'd have to say this was a better attempt at reviving a property with some young blood than we got out of Indiana Jones 4, or Wall Street 2, or even Predators. In spite of its flaws, I loved the Tron experience.
It is a pretty haunting film. Between the ethereal world and the amazing music, Tron definitely comes home with you.
Now, all I need is to bring a light cycle home with me, too.
I've seen you drive a Vespa in India, Matt. You might want to start with a light scooter and work your way up.
Okay, true enough. Well, remember to keep your eyes right here for a look at all your Geek movies and all your Geek games from the two geeks who always have something to say.
And you can keep up with all our past previews and reviews and have your say on yourgeeknews.com.